Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a monument so famous, Stonehenge, that, well, you probably feel like you know it inside out.
Yeah, but it's funny, isn't it? Because when you actually dig into the archaeology, the latest science, it's not just that iconic circle. What emerges is honestly this incredibly complex site, built in stages, changed over like 1,500 years by totally different groups of people.
And that's really our mission for you today, isn't it? To get past that postcard view and appreciate the sheer scale, the logistics, the engineering smarts, and frankly, where the builders even came from. It's quite a story. Okay, let's ground ourselves. We're talking about a prehistoric megalithic structure, Wiltshire, England. And the key thing right off the bat, this wasn't a quick job. It started way back, maybe 3100 BC. But those huge stones everyone thinks of, the Sarsens, they didn't go up until much later, between 2600 and 2400 BC.
And that sarsen ring, the big outer one, I mean, the cleverness there is just astounding when you look closely. These stones are massive, right? Like 13 feet tall, 25 tons. But what really sets Stonehenge apart compared to other Neolithic sites is the joinery.
Joinery, you mean like carpentry?
Exactly like carpentry, but in stone. They carved mortise and tenon joints. So a bump on top of one stone fits into a hole carved into the lintel sitting on top. And they even used tongue and groove joints to lock those horizontal lintels together. It's like they were thinking like woodworkers, but applying it to these enormous stone blocks. It implies some serious planning.
That really shifts the image, doesn't it? From just, brute force hauling stones to highly skilled prehistoric engineers. But here's something that often surprises people. The original purpose, right at the beginning. It wasn't necessarily about the sun or big gatherings.
That's absolutely right. From the get-go, around 3000 BC, it seems Stonehenge was connected with, well, the dead. It functioned as a burial ground. We have cremation burials dating right back to when the first ditch and bank were dug, and that funerary role, it carried on for at least 500 years.
Okay, so that sets a different kind of tone. Let's dive into that earliest phase then, Stonehenge 1, around 3100 BC. You mentioned the ditch and bank, but there were also those 56 pits, the Aubrey holes. What exactly were they, and what did they tell us?
Well, the Aubrey holes are these circular pits. They probably held timber posts originally, maybe even small stones later. But crucially, when they were excavated, they found deposits of cremated human bone. We're talking over 50,000 fragments, representing at least 63 individuals, men, women, even children.
And the really big clue from those remains. It hints at this huge reach the site already had, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
Because we can figure out where some of these people grew up using something called strontium isotope analysis. Basically, the strontium in your bones and teeth reflects the geology of where you lived as a child. It's like a sort of chemical postcode from the past.
A prehistoric passport, almost. And what did it show? Where were these early people from?
It showed that many of them, buried right at the start, around 3000 BC, didn't grow up near Stonehenge at all. They came from West Wales, near the Presley Hills.
Wow. So even before the massive stones arrived, even in that very first earthwork phase, people were traveling, maybe making pilgrimages all the way from Wales. That suggests this specific spot was deeply important from the very beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And maybe even before that. Underneath the old visitor car park area, they found these huge Mesolithic post holes, dating back to maybe 8000 BC, millennia before Stonehenge itself. It suggests this piece of land had some kind of ritual significance for a very, very long time.
That kind of long-term focus on one spot is incredible. And that dedication, that leads us to the logistics. I mean, the sheer effort involved in building the later phases. You mentioned two main types of stone. Their origins are key here.
Yeah, radically different stories. You've got the Sarsens, the giants, 30 main uprights, 26 tons apiece. Now, they came from West Woods in Wiltshire. That's about 16 miles north. Still a massive challenge, obviously, but, relatively local.
Okay, 16 miles. Then there are the bluestones, smaller, but way more numerous. And these came from?
These are the igneous rocks, mostly dolerite, but 2 tons each. And they were transported an almost unbelievable distance, 150 miles, from the Presley Hills in Wales. Just think about that. Moving 2-ton stones 150 miles across country, probably using rollers, sledges, maybe even rafts. Without wheels. It's staggering.
Just staggering. And recent work on those bluestones suggests it wasn't even as simple as just quarrying them, right?
That's the really dramatic finding. There's now pretty compelling evidence suggesting the bluestones weren't just quarried fresh. They might have actually been part of another earlier stone circle in Wales that was then dismantled.
Hang on. So they took apart a sacred site in Wales and then hauled the pieces 150 miles to Wiltshire to sort of rebuild it. That sounds pretty radical. What's the evidence for that specific dismantling idea?
It comes from a site called Wan Mon, back in the Presley Hills. Excavations there uncovered the sockets of a dismantled stone circle. And get this, its diameter, 110 meters, seems to be identical to the diameter of the ditch surrounding the earliest known bluestone settings at Stonehenge. The dates match up too. The Welsh Circle was likely built around 3400 BC and taken down a few hundred years later, just when the bluestones started appearing at Stonehenge. It points towards maybe a migration of people, or perhaps an attempt to merge two powerful sacred places into one.
That's profound, like physically moving the heart of a belief system. But why are those specific stones from Wales? Was there something special about them?
Well, one fascinating possibility is their sound. Some of the bluestones have unusual acoustic properties. When you strike them, they ring, almost like a bell or a gong. They're called lithophones or ringing rocks. So if Stonehenge was maybe a place for healing or intense rituals, imagine a circle of stones that literally sang or chimed. The sensory effect would have been, well, overwhelming.
A ringing circle, that adds another dimension entirely. And just when the logistics seem maxed out, there was that recent news, 2024, about the altar
Ah,
stone.
yes, the altar stone. It's that big sandstone block lying flat now. Everyone assumed it was also Welsh, maybe from closer by. But this new analysis suggests it likely came from much, much further afield, the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland.
Scotland, that's what, 430 miles?
Something like that, yeah. A 430-mile journey, which, if correct, just explodes our understanding of the connections. It suggests Britain wasn't isolated pockets, but this vast interconnected network stretching from Orkney down to Wiltshire, even in the Neolithic.
Okay, we followed the stones, Wales, Wiltshire, now maybe Scotland. Let's shift to the people. Who were these builders across the different phases?
Right, so the earliest builders, phase 1 and 2, the ones digging the ditch, setting up the first posts or bluestones, they were primarily Neolithic farmers. Genetically, their ancestry traces back mainly to early European farmers who'd originally come from Anatolia, modern Turkey, arriving in Britain around 4000 BC.
That seems straightforward enough, but wasn't there a sort of genetic twist specifically with the male lines in that group?
There was, yes. It's quite interesting. While their overall ancestry was Anatolian farmer, their male lineage, the Y chromosome DNA, was almost entirely from earlier Western hunter-gatherer groups. It suggests that as these farming groups spread across Europe before reaching Britain, there was this specific pattern of mixing, mainly involving hunter-gatherer men integrating into the farming communities. It shows things were complex right from the start.
And then came the big change. The time when the massive Sarsen Circle was built, 2600, 2400 BC. This coincides with a huge cultural and, well, population shift in Britain.
A massive one. Around 2500 BC, you get the arrival of people associated with the bell beaker culture, migrating from mainland Europe. And the genetic evidence is stark. Within a few centuries, over 90% of the existing Neolithic gene pool in Britain was replaced by ancestry linked to these newcomers.
90%, that's almost a total population replacement. And these bell beaker people, they seem to have organized huge gatherings near Stonehenge.
Absolutely. Just a couple miles away is Durrington Walls. It's this enormous henge enclosure thought to be the builder's settlement, or at least a major ceremonial hub. Evidence there suggests gatherings of maybe up to 4,000 people for festivals, probably around the solstices. And here's where the reach gets really impressive again. Isotope analysis on animal bones found there, pig and cattle bones from the feasts.
Let me guess they weren't local animal.
Not all of them, no. Some have been brought from as far away as the Scottish Highlands. Can you imagine? Driving livestock hundreds of miles for a feast at Durrington Walls, likely tied to work happening at Stonehenge. It paints a picture of a truly national, maybe even international undertaking.
So we have the who, the how, the when, but the ultimate question is still why. Why pour generations of effort into this place? Let's look at the main theories about its function. They seem to overlap a bit.
They often do, yeah. The most famous, of course, is archaeoastronomy. The alignment is undeniable. The main axis points towards the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. Some think a natural feature in the landscape might have highlighted this alignment first. So the idea is it was a kind of celestial observatory, tracking the sun, maybe the moon, perhaps predicting eclipses, marking the seasons. Vital for agriculture, but also probably deeply symbolic.
And then there's a theory connected back to those special bluestones from Wales.
Right, the healing center idea. Yeah. This gained traction partly because of those ringing rocks we mentioned, but also because some of the human remains found buried at Stonehenge show signs of serious injury or illness, deformities. The thinking is maybe people undertook long journeys here, like a prehistoric lords seeking cures from the powerful stones or the spirits associated with the place.
And the third main theory connects Stonehenge to its neighbor, Durrington Walls, in a kind of symbolic landscape.
Yeah, this is Mike Parker Pearson's ritual landscape theory. It's quite elegant. He suggests Durrington walls, built mainly of wood, which decays, represented the land of the living, a place for temporary gatherings, feasting. Stonehenge, built of permanent stone, represented the land of the dead, the realm of the ancestors,
Yeah.
and the river Avon flowing between them acted as a kind of ritual pathway, connecting life and death, may be used for processions during festivals.
It creates this picture of a whole ceremonial complex, not just one isolated monument. Fast forward a few thousand years, and Stonehenge obviously kept fascinating people, turning up in myths and legends.
Oh, definitely. You've got the Arthurian legends where Merlin magically transports the stones from Ireland. Supposedly they were healing stones there too. Or the folk tale about the devil throwing a stone at a friar, hitting his heel, which explains the heel stone. It shows that even much later, people couldn't comprehend how it was built, so they came up with magical explanations.
Then came the scientists. John Aubrey in the 17th century, William Stukeley later, even Charles Darwin did experiments there, studying how earthworms bury things over time. But by the 20th century, the monument itself was, well, falling down in places.
It really was. Some of the Saracens were leaning quite badly. So there were major restoration projects, 1901, 1958, 1963. They had to use cranes to lift stones back into place, and controversially perhaps, they set some of them in concrete foundations to keep them stable. A necessary evil, maybe, to preserve it.
And that need for preservation, that tension between access and protection, it continues right up to today, especially with things like traffic nearby.
Yes, the biggest recent battle has been over the A303 road tunnel. The main road runs very close to the stones, causing noise and vibration. The plan was to build a 2-mile tunnel underneath the landscape. But archaeologists and conservationists were deeply worried it would destroy undiscovered archaeology in the tunnel's path, and maybe even destabilize the stones themselves through vibration during construction. Opponents called it state-sponsored vandalism.
Strong words. It was debated for years, approved, challenged. What happened in the end?
Well, after multiple legal challenges and huge controversy, the tunnel scheme was finally canceled in 2024, a big relief for those wanting to protect the wider landscape's integrity. But, the site still faces pressures. There's occasional vandalism from 19th century tourists chipping off bits as souvenirs, to more recent protests involving paint or people chaining themselves to stones. Managing Stonehenge is a constant balancing act.
It's been an incredible journey, hasn't it? From possibly a simple burial ground through these phases of immense engineering, becoming a place of myth, and now this global icon needing careful protection. I think the real takeaway for you listening is that Stonehenge wasn't just built and then left. It was a living site, constantly adapted, demanding unbelievable effort and involving connections across vast distances, shaped by different peoples over millennia.
Absolutely. And maybe the final thought to leave you with this. When you pull those threads together, the early burials from Wales, the stones from Wales, maybe even Scotland, the feasting evidence showing animals brought from the Scottish Highlands, you have to start seeing Stonehenge not just as an English monument, but as this continental hub, a place of immense significance that drew people and materials from across Britain, maybe even further afield thousands of years ago. It forces us to rethink just how connected the prehistoric world really was.